The guards thought they were removing an ordinary black veteran. They had no idea the quiet man they were humiliating was about to become the most important person in the room. One guard grabbed his arm. Another demanded his credentials. Then the veteran calmly said 6 words. "You should call your commander." They laughed. 10 minutes later, every guard in that building would be standing at attention. Before we reveal why, subscribe for more powerful stories of justice, courage, and unexpected identity reveals. The annual military charity gala was already packed when Marcus Hayes arrived. He was 67 years old, grey-haired, quiet, wearing a simple dark suit with a small military veteran pin on his lapel. He didn't look wealthy. He didn't look powerful. And apparently, that was the problem. Marcus approached the VIP entrance. A security guard stepped in front of him. "Invitation." Marcus handed it over. The guard examined it, then looked at Marcus. Then back at the invitation. "This section isn't for you." Marcus frowned. "I believe it is." The guard laughed. "Sir, this is the VIP area." A second guard walked over. "You need to use the general entrance." Marcus calmly explained that he had been personally invited. The first guard shook his head. People say that all the time. Several guests nearby turned to watch. Marcus didn't argue. He simply pointed toward his name printed on the invitation. The guard barely glanced at it. Anyone can print a name. Then he reached for Marcus's arm. Marcus stepped back. "Don't touch me." The guard grabbed him anyway. A second guard seized his other arm. The crowd began whispering. Marcus remained remarkably calm. Then one guard said something that changed the entire atmosphere. "Old man, stop making this difficult." Marcus looked directly into his eyes. "I served this country for 32 years. The guard smirked. "Then you should know how to follow instructions." Marcus slowly reached into his jacket. The guards immediately tensed. He pulled out a small black identification case. But before he could open it, a voice thundered from across the lobby. "Get your hands off him." Everyone turned. A decorated military commander was walking rapidly toward them, and the moment he saw Marcus, he stopped. His face changed completely. Then he snapped to attention. "General Hayes, sir." The guards went pale, because the man they had just dragged out of the VIP area wasn't simply a veteran. He was the commander's former commanding officer. The entire lobby went silent. The commander stood perfectly straight in front of Marcus. "General Hayes, sir." The guards slowly released his arms. But Marcus didn't move. He simply looked at the 2 men who had just humiliated him. Then he looked at the commander. "Colonel Davis." "Yes, sir." Marcus nodded. "It's been a long time." The guards exchanged terrified glances. One of them tried to recover. "Sir, we didn't know who he was." Marcus looked at him. "That wasn't the problem." The guard swallowed. "What was?" Marcus answered quietly. "You didn't know me, so you decided what I was worth." That sentence hit the room harder than shouting ever could. Colonel Davis turned toward the security supervisor. "Who authorized this?" The supervisor rushed forward. "Sir, there must be some misunderstanding." Davis didn't blink. "Then explain why a decorated general was physically removed from an event he was invited to attend." The supervisor looked at Marcus. He didn't appear to have the proper credentials. Marcus slowly held up the invitation. "My name is printed here." The supervisor glanced at it. Then his face changed, because underneath Marcus's name was another line. Honorary Chairman, Veterans Foundation. Marcus wasn't just a guest. He was the reason the gala existed. The event had been created years earlier to raise money for wounded veterans and military families. Marcus had personally funded its first major expansion. But he had deliberately stopped using his military title at public events. He wanted people to treat him like everyone else. Instead, the guards had shown him exactly how they treated someone they thought had no power. Davis turned toward the guards. Where did you get the instruction to remove him? Neither answered. The supervisor finally said, "It was a VIP security protocol." Marcus looked at him. "Who wrote it?" The supervisor hesitated, then whispered a name. Marcus's expression changed. "Are you sure?" "Yes, sir." Marcus looked toward Davis. "Then we have a bigger problem." Davis immediately understood. "Why?" Marcus pointed toward the VIP entrance. "Because that protocol didn't exist last year." The commander's face hardened. "Who changed it?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at the security cameras. "That's what I want to know." And then one of the guards accidentally said something he immediately regretted. "We were told to watch for people like him." Marcus turned. "People like me." The guard went silent. Colonel Davis stepped forward. "What exactly did you mean by that?" The guard couldn't answer. But Marcus already knew. Someone had specifically instructed security to target certain guests. And now he wanted to know why. The phrase "people like him" changed the investigation. Colonel Davis ordered the security cameras preserved immediately. Nobody was allowed to delete or alter a single recording. Marcus stood quietly beside him. He wasn't angry. That somehow made the guards even more nervous. Davis turned toward the security supervisor. "Who trained these men?" The supervisor hesitated. "An outside contractor." Marcus asked, "Who hired them?" Another silence. Finally, the supervisor admitted that the contractor had been brought in 3 months earlier by the gala's executive director, Richard Blake. Marcus knew the name. Richard had been responsible for expanding the event's donor program. But there was something Marcus didn't understand. Why would Richard change security procedures? The supervisor looked uncomfortable. Because he said certain VIP guests were becoming a problem. Marcus narrowed his eyes. "Which guests?" The supervisor opened a tablet. Several names appeared. Marcus recognized every one. Black veterans, retired military officers, community leaders. Several long-time donors. All had complained about being questioned more aggressively at previous events. Davis looked at Marcus. This wasn't random. Marcus shook his head. No, it was systematic. For months, certain guests had been treated as if they didn't belong. And there was something else. The security company had been billing the foundation for enhanced protection. The invoices were enormous. But the extra security personnel didn't exist. Marcus stared at the records. Someone is stealing from the foundation. Davis immediately called for the financial director. Minutes later, she arrived carrying a folder. Marcus opened it. The numbers were worse than expected. Hundreds of thousands of dollars had disappeared through inflated security contracts. The money was being routed through shell companies. But one payment caught Marcus's attention. A large transfer had been made to a company registered under a familiar name, Richard Blake. Marcus looked at Davis. "This goes higher." Davis nodded. Then the financial director quietly added something. "There's one more thing." Marcus looked up. The board approved every payment. "Every member?" She shook her head. "Almost every member." Marcus stared at her. "Who refused?" She slid one document across the table. Marcus read the name. Then he looked toward the crowded gala. The one board member who had refused to approve the security contracts was standing across the room. And that man was suddenly being escorted out by 2 security officers. Marcus immediately stood. "Stop them!" But the doors were already closing. The commander looked at Marcus. "Sir, what's happening?" Marcus's voice became firm. "Someone isn't just stealing money." He pointed toward the disappearing board member. "They're trying to silence the person who found it." The board member's name was Daniel Brooks, a retired black colonel, and one of the foundation's most respected financial watchdogs. 2 guards were escorting him toward a side exit when Marcus stepped into their path. "Let him go." The guards stopped. Colonel Davis moved beside Marcus. The atmosphere changed instantly. Daniel looked relieved. "They found out," he whispered. Marcus frowned. "Found out what?" Daniel looked around before answering. The contracts weren't just inflated. He lowered his voice. They were created to hide something much bigger. Marcus's expression hardened. What? Daniel pulled a small flash drive from his jacket. Donor money. Marcus stared at it. How much? Daniel swallowed. Almost $12 million. The number stunned everyone. Money donated by veterans, military families, and private supporters had been diverted through fake security contracts, consulting companies, and shell organizations. But Daniel had discovered something even worse. The money wasn't simply being stolen. Some of it had been used to pay people who helped conceal the transactions. Marcus looked toward Richard Blake. Richard was standing near the stage, watching. When their eyes met, Richard immediately turned away. Marcus knew. He had been exposed. Colonel Davis quietly instructed his officers to secure the building. No one was to leave until investigators arrived. Richard suddenly stepped toward the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, there appears to have been an unfortunate misunderstanding. Marcus walked toward him. Richard smiled nervously. This event should continue. Marcus stopped a few feet away. You're right. Richard looked relieved. Then Marcus continued. But not the way you planned. The room fell silent. Marcus asked the financial director to display the payment records on the giant screen. One by one, suspicious transactions appeared. The audience began whispering. Richard's face drained of color. He tried to stop the presentation. This information is confidential. Marcus turned toward him. So was the money. That line silenced the room. Then Daniel stepped forward. He explained how he had repeatedly warned the board. Every warning had been ignored, until someone attempted to remove him from the building. Richard finally snapped. You have no authority to do this. Marcus looked at him. Then Colonel Davis stepped forward. Actually, he does. Richard laughed nervously. Who is he? Davis answered. General Marcus Hayes. The room erupted in whispers. Marcus had never introduced himself by rank, but now he had no choice, because the Foundation's charter contained one final provision. As its founding chairman, Marcus had emergency authority during suspected financial misconduct. Richard's face collapsed. But Marcus wasn't finished. He turned toward the security guards. You were following orders. Then he looked at Richard. Now we're going to find out who gave them. And just as investigators entered the building, Richard received a phone call. He answered. His face went pale. Someone on the other end had just told him the evidence had been found. Not by the police, by Marcus. The phone call lasted less than 30 seconds. Richard ended it with shaking hands. Marcus watched him carefully. You're worried? Richard forced a smile. No. Marcus nodded. Then you won't mind staying. Richard looked toward the exits. Every one of them was now secured. Investigators entered the gala and began collecting documents, computers, contracts, and security records. The guards who had dragged Marcus away were interviewed separately. One of them finally admitted what everyone had suspected. Richard had personally instructed security to keep certain people out of the VIP area. But there was more. He had specifically told them that if any black veteran challenged the order, they should remove him immediately. The statement was documented. Richard could no longer deny it. Daniel handed investigators the flash drive. It contained months of financial records, emails, and copies of contracts. The evidence connected Richard to the shell companies receiving the Foundation's money. By midnight, the gala was over, but the investigation had only begun. Richard was removed from his position. The security contract was terminated, and the Foundation announced that every diverted dollar would be traced. But Marcus asked the board for something else. He wanted the veterans who had been humiliated to be invited back. The following month, the Foundation held another event. This time, the entrance looked different. No separate treatment. No suspicious questioning. No assumptions. Daniel stood beside Marcus as dozens of veterans entered. Colonel Davis approached Marcus. General, You could have used your rank that night. Marcus smiled. I shouldn't have needed it. Davis nodded. Marcus looked toward the entrance. That's the part people keep missing. He had spent 32 years serving a country that demanded courage from him. Yet after retirement, some people still judged him before hearing his name. The guards had seen an older black man in a simple suit. They never bothered to see the medals he had earned. They never asked what he had sacrificed. They never imagined that the quiet veteran they were dragging away was the person who had built the very foundation they were protecting. And that was the real lesson. Respect shouldn't arrive only after someone proves they have power. It should exist before the proof. Because Marcus didn't become worthy when Colonel Davis called him general. He was worthy when he walked through that door. He was worthy when nobody recognized him. And he was worthy when the guards decided he didn't belong. The difference was that, in the end, the truth finally became impossible to ignore. If this story reminded you that you should never judge someone's worth by their appearance, race, age, or status, subscribe for more powerful stories of justice, courage, and unexpected reveals.